Welcome back to Play on Wheels. In today's video, we're working on our 1950 Ford Flathead V8. We got some upgrades to do to the old thing to get it ready to go in our 1950 Ford with the turbocharger. So hang around, it's going to be a fun video, and I hope I'm going to teach you guys a little something. Okay, we're going to loosen the generator up. This nut right here, I believe, is what relieves the tension on the slider. See, we got the tension off the belt. Get that out of the way. Get these two off. I believe these hold the generator bracket and fan assembly onto the front of the intake, or the front of the block. Yep, it's getting loose, maybe. Wait a second. It looks like this might take the whole thing off. All right. Let's see. What? There's a shim on there or something. What the heck? All right, technology, remember that square and the lock nut, or lock washer. I'm not going to put that on there. Okay. This whole thing comes off together, which is quite nice. Get that out of the way. Okay, now that we got the fan assembly and generator out of the way, we're going to take off these water pumps, and then we'll take off the fuel pump, and we'll start grabbing some parts from the parts table back there and making some upgrades. Is that all? At least try to catch the coolant. Is there a bolt? What? No way. Is there a bolt in there? Look, they put a bolt in the hole. That's crazy. Bolt in the hole. Okay, for the second one, we already know there's a bolt in the hole on this side. And one on the side. All right, let's get this out of the way. Now we can get to the last bolt on our water pump. Wrong size. And our second water pump. These actually aren't in terrible shape. Original though, look at that. We'll take this fuel pump off. I already have these loose from earlier. Oh, I said that. I had one of them loose. Okay, fuel pump coming up. Oh no, I'm in a pickle here. Oh, that didn't sound good. Dadgummit. All right. Little gas coming out of there. What is this? So, because this car had the vacuum operated wipers, or pump actually has the vacuum pump on the bottom of it. That's not super common on these old cars. Okay, we're going to zip off the rest of these accessories and we'll grab some new parts and start the upgrades. All right, we're actually going to go ahead and pull our engine plate and intake off. Take a look inside this engine. All right, let's see how she looks inside. Nope, might need the help of our hammer here. Go. Oh, it's just heavy. All right, what do we have here? A little surface rust in there. You'll have that. This thing did sit for a long time. Wonder what this is. Oh, that's casting. Wow. Okay, we set our intake back on just in the interest of not getting a bunch of crap down in our engine. Okay, so we've arrived at the parts table, which is where my life savings for the last 10 years is, but that's okay. First things first, we are actually going to replace the cam gear, the timing gear in the engine, because it's a common thing for the plastic gear that's inside these old flatheads to break or chip, and they make an aluminum aftermarket one that's pretty good, so we're going to go with that. And I think we have a crank gear here as well, so let's get to it. We're going to install these parts. Okay. Ew. Stick that over here. You know, these engines are quite simple. It's pretty crazy, but I guess it makes sense for 75-year-old technology. We got it. And try not to destroy our gasket. Come on. I don't know if the gasket's savable or not. Oh, would you look at that? Somebody's already been in there and replaced the gear. Well, I guess that's an upgrade that we don't necessarily have to do, and I'm not sure if I can get my money back on that or not, but by golly, we're gonna try. I wonder if by 1970, which is the time frame that this engine was, again, supposedly rebuilt, if they had already released the aluminum aftermarket, I guess, upgrade or whatever for these. Apparently so. But that saves us a little bit of, I wish I had known that. I guess, you know, I probably could have looked, but who would have guessed, right? I mean, I wouldn't have thought that, but anyway. All right, well, now that we've sacrificed this thing that's going to leak forever, I guess that's one thing that we don't have to do. I went ahead and ordered the one-piece front main seal for our front cover here. Since our aluminum gear is already installed, there's no need to change that out. So now I want to move on to actually starting the first couple of steps that it takes for us to prepare this engine to be fuel injection ready. First things first, we need a crank trigger signal, and I have a way to achieve that, and I'll show you guys right now. And here it is. And for those of you wondering, basically what this is a 36-1 crankshaft reluctor wheel. And the way that this works is we have our crank sensor here. I'll go ahead and unbox that. So we have our sensor here, and this Walker one is actually quite nice because it has a built-in mounting bracket. So what we have here is our crankshaft trigger wheel and our crankshaft position sensor. And if you're not familiar, in order to make an electronic fuel injection system work on an old V8 or anything that didn't actually come with EFI, what you have to do is you have to provide your electronic fuel injection computer, or your ECU, you have to provide it essentially a way for it to know the position of the engine in its rotation. What this does is this wheel rotates. You have to affix this to the crankshaft, and this wheel rotates around and around with the engine, and the sensor picks up all these little teeth on the engine. And if you'll notice here, we have 36-1. The -1 means that it has one missing tooth right here. And basically this signal can tell the ECU that this missing tooth corresponds with some rotational position of our engine in its normal rotation. So what we have to do is take this reluctor wheel that we have here, and we have to find a spot on our old Flathead engine to mount this, and also mount that crankshaft position sensor that I just showed you guys. And I'm thinking what I'm going to try to do, I'm not 100% sure how this crankshaft pulley here works. Hopefully you guys can see what I'm talking about, but my idea would be potentially to drill this out or cut this out and make this affixed sort of right here between the crankshaft and the timing cover, and then we would essentially make a bracket, you know, using 1 or 10 of these bolt holes to hold our crankshaft sensor, and that would allow us to mount our trigger wheel here to the front of the engine and basically have a way to tell our ECU again where it is in the rotation. Quite a bit easier to get that crank pulley off than I thought, and I figured I'd kind of show you guys a little better idea of what I'm talking about here. The idea being to take this reluctor wheel, somehow open up this middle hole here to fit around our crankshaft pulley, which just slips over the nose of the crank over there. I may or may not have had to use the wrong tool for the right problem here. Yeah, it's cooled off. So I didn't really have a good way to hog out the middle of this reluctor wheel here. I used my plasma cutter and got us a whole heck of a lot closer than what we were. Y'all wouldn't believe it if I didn't show it to you, so I'm just going to show you now. I cleaned up the reluctor wheel just a little bit more, cleaned off some of the burrs, and sorry for the lack of focus here, but what you can see is that I've got our crankshaft pulley installed all the way to where it meets up with the collar there on the crank. And what we actually have, let me see if I can get a better angle. What we actually have is, of course, this not attached, but our reluctor wheel is able to spin freely without obstruction. And we actually have, I know what looks on camera like nothing, but there's actually probably at least 3/16, maybe 1/8 of an inch of clearance between the backside of our reluctor wheel and the front of our timing cover here. We're going to get this sensor mounted up. We're going to go ahead and tack weld the reluctor wheel onto our pulley here. We're just going to put a couple tacks around it just in case I've done something wrong and we actually have to undo this. I don't want to just send it with a full bead all the way around and come back and have to cut that thing off. We got our engine turned over here, and I just wanted to jump in real quick and show you guys how clean this engine is on the inside. I mean, everything stands to reason that this engine was very recently rebuilt. See the cross hatching there on the cylinders? Again, that's old school machine work there, of course, but everything down in there is looking really nice. After a lot of fighting with this thing, trying to get this sleeve off the front of the crank, I decided just to go ahead and weld a couple of tabs on there, as you can see, because we're getting rid of it anyway. So we got our puller mocked up, just got her welded up. We're gonna see if we can't pull this thing off of here. Okay, we're getting it off, and that thing's probably still hot. Nope, not really. There it is. So just take that spacer right there, pulled her off. So now we can get the new one on and put our one-piece seal on, oil pan back on the engine, flip her back over, and that should be the last time that we have any of this open before we stab it back in the car. Okay, got my new one-piece seal and sleeve. So we're gonna pull this sleeve out and drive it on the front of the crankshaft, and then that'll be that. And when we go to put the oil pan on, this will come into play. Okay, I got the new crank sleeve installed on the front of our crankshaft. Went ahead and cleaned up the oil pan sealing surfaces here, got the old gaskets out of the way. We're gonna jump over to the workbench, clean up our oil pan, slap it on this engine, flip it over, and we'll be ready to move on. I'm finishing up, lubing up our rear main seal, and we're gonna run over and drop this pan onto the engine. Well, I'm gonna have to trim this gasket back because it's designed for the factory two-piece front seal, so I'm gonna have to cut this back real quick. Okay, got that gasket trimmed back, a little bit of RTV in our seal housing here, and we'll slide this front main seal in. That RTV will help keep this seal from turning inside the rubber housing here, so that'll dry up. Wipe away a little bit of this excess. Right, if I've done everything correctly, crap, one more thing. I'm gonna clean out this little pickup screen here. I think they made this so you can pop that open, take your screen here, and I'm gonna go spray that out with some brake clean real quick. All right, got our screen cleaned up. Pop that back into place. We'll hook it back in, hopefully. Finally, we can drop our pan on and hopefully not screw this up. Get the fresh rear main seal in there, lubed up. I'm already struggling here. What am I hitting? What the heck? What's the problem? Ah, the stupid dipstick tube. I did not take the time to clean these bolts up. Oh, I can't even get one started. Let's try that one. All right, I'm gonna get all these bolts in and get the engine turned back over, and we should be done with that for the last time before putting it back inside our car. I might have screwed up and forgot to put the turbo drain bung in, so ended up flipping the engine back over here and pulling the oil pan off one more time, and we got that 10 AN bung welded into our oil pan here. So our turbo that will be mounted roughly right here, of course inverted from this view, but mounted right here, will drain into that port that we welded there. So good to go on that. Just one minor hiccup. We got it flipped over, oil pan's on, fresh gaskets, fresh rear main seal on the oil pan side, fresh one-piece front main. Now we've got to jump in, clean up our timing cover, slap it back on, and install our water pumps, and we'll about have this engine ready to drop back in the car. And then it's transmission, interior, and this thing will be ready to drive. Y'all, we got that front timing cover on, and also we got our front pulley on that we worked on earlier in the video. That's got our crank trigger wheel, and I've gone ahead and started making a bracket to position our crank sensor right here, somewhere about in this spot. That way it won't interfere with the water pump or the belts. As y'all can see from the tools, I've been hard at work over here trying to get our crank sensor bracket made, and I think we're finally ready to call this done. As you can see, we've got it mounted here to those two holes, the one in the timing cover and one over here below the water pump. So out of the way, because the water pump doesn't use this bolt. I don't think, at least I hope it doesn't. Some of you might know what you're looking at here, some of you might not. For those that don't, these are 4 of the 8, so one bank of a LS V8 set of ignition coils. And as you know, if you've been following along and watching any of the other videos, that we're putting EFI on this thing, so we need a way to control our timing to each cylinder. So what I'm going to do is probably piss a lot of people off and put GM parts on a Flathead V8, but that's just going to be absolutely okay, because we're going to mount these coil packs right here, and we're going to have coil on plug ignition on our old Flathead here. Okay, when you're doing the wrong thing with the wrong parts, I guess it's okay to do the right thing with the wrong parts. So I ended up making myself a little stud head bolt here out of one of the factory head bolts. And what we do, we're going to drill a hole in this bracket, and this is going to come up and mount there. And we have our bracket made for the front side, and that's what's going to let us mount, at least on the passenger side, our LS coils on our Flathead V8. Well, I just about think we're at the halfway point here. We've got our bracket at the rear made up. Went ahead and welded this bolt to the bottom of this bracket, so it's like a stud. We have our stud off of our head bolt. That bolt is back torqued. And we have on the front our bracket off of our head. I'm going to weld this bolt to this bracket just like I did on the rear to make that like a stud there. So that gets us half of the way to getting our LS coils on our Flathead. Now we've got to work on the driver's side over here. I've got another set of these coil packs. So let's jump right in. Coolant temp sensor installed in the passenger side head. All right, I got these brackets finished up. Kind of looks weird, I'm not gonna lie. LS coils on a 75-year-old Flathead V8. We're gonna get some wires, hopefully ones with 90-degree coil boots, because my idea is that we'll kind of loop them 90 and then loop around and onto the plug. Each one will loop around. This one will kind of loop around the oil line on the back here. But all these are welded up and bolted tight, so this is kind of what it's going to look like. I know it looks really weird, but it's the things we do for timing control. We got our crankshaft position sensor, our trigger wheel, our oil pan back installed, new front and rear main seals. We've done a lot of work on this engine. I think it's finally back together to the point where we can finish installing the accessories and get ready to put this engine back in the car. So thank you for watching. Stick around for more videos. We have a lot more to come. Again, if you haven't already, like and subscribe. We have a ton more work to do on this car. We have a bunch of other projects. Thank you for watching. Have a good day.